a bunch of very highly well-regarded people. So thank you all for attending. So welcome. It's good to see you all. It's good to have you here. I don't know which hole Mr. Casada is on, but looks like a lovely course. So love to be there sometime.
Honolulu.
I definitely would love to be there. But it is good to see you all. It's nice to see the school representatives, the board members, and obviously a very exciting time for the public schools as we begin to discuss the reentry of our students and our staff and the getting to get back to some sense of normalcy as we move forward. So welcome. We have a number of committee reports today, and we have a number of voting items. So if you're looking at the agenda, you'll see that we have 5 committee reports. We'll be voting on the draft minutes from February. I hope you've had a moment to review those. And then we'll also be voting on the equity committee. They're asking for approval to proceed with a presented plan. So, Jeanette, do you want me to have the vote on the minutes, or do you want to go straight to committee reports?
Let's go straight to committee reports, and that way we can, because part of the committee reports do have a voting item in there.
That's correct. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started with our committees. And our first committee report is from Equity and Social Justice Trainings from our progress presentation discussion. So, Equity and Social Justice Training.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So the committee has been hard at work over the course of the last few months, and we started out with having a few conversations with a few anti-racist, anti-oppression trainers to gain a good understanding of the landscape and what's available. So what we know is that APS is working with ARDI to embark on community conversations and appetizer trainings. Community conversations are 2.5-hour conversations that really start with an umbrella view of structural racism, moving to an understanding of how that impacts school staff, students, and families. And then it ends with a conversation about what participants can do about this in their work. Appetizers are a 5-hour introductory training that previews full anti-racist trainings presented by the People's Institute. It begins with an historical understanding of racism and moves through a contextual understanding of how systems and gatekeepers uphold racist policies and practices. The appetizers and community conversations really prepare people for the full anti-racist training with the People's Institute. And APS has committed to one of these trainings. 2.5 days, which is 6 hours a day, that go in depth on what was learned in the appetizers. These trainings will help participants organize their organization with an anti-racist lens, develop common language and understanding of systemic racism, develop action steps, and then make a plan to actually address systemic racism in an intersectional way within their organizations and communities with which they work. United Way, in collaboration with the Albuquerque Community Foundation, is working with Soulfire Consulting to go through deep anti-racist and anti-oppression training. ABC staff members, an APS employee, and a Disability Resources New Mexico employee will also participate in these trainings. And this training is known as RID, R-I-D, which is an acronym for Recognizing, Interrupting, and Disrupting Oppression in New Mexico. It has 3 series. Series 1 is Recognizing Exclusion and Growing Awareness. Series 2 is Interrupting Bias and Relating Boldly Across Differences. And Series 3 is Disrupting Systems of Oppression, Advanced Allyship, and Praxis. Each of these series will include 3 sessions, they're A, B, and C sessions, of 2.5 hours each on Zoom. Most of these sessions will be scheduled at least a week apart to give people time to integrate the learning and do pre-work. Pre-work and between session work will be required. It's about an hour between each session, and it's led by 2 facilitators. So this is our proposal to the board. Based on what's happening, 100% of community school coordinators, community school principals, ABC staff, and some staff from partner organizations will receive intersectional anti-racist training. We're asking the board and the ILT to join the learning by committing 100% of the board members and the intermediary leadership team to the following by the end of 2021. Joining the existing appetizer trainings that APS has set up with ARTI, attending one full training from the People's Institute. And these trainings would incorporate APS staff, ABC board members, ILT members, community organizational partners, and community members in mixed groups. It is believed that having a diverse group in terms of race, gender, economic status, and organizational statuses and identities actually helps participants learn more deeply and ensures all participants learn alongside folks with broader experiences than their own. The cost, if you were wondering about that. So we know already that various partners and entities have already leveraged nearly $100,000 for this work. ABC would need to find an additional $16,500 for this. The combined investment would mean that 100% of ABC board members, ILT staff, ABC staff, and staff from the community partner organizations, as well as community school coordinators and community school principals would receive in-depth and anti-racist and anti-oppressive trainings. So the board, again, would be committing to attending one appetizer, that's 5 hours, and some dates are already set and some are to be determined. Attending one full 2.5-day training. The first one is actually scheduled for May 14th through the 16th, and the other two are to be determined. And the Equity and Social Justice Committee will work with the board, ILT staff, APS, and ARTI to schedule out the trainings. The committee would also work with various board entities to allocate funding for this purpose. So what I want to do now is I want to move to a couple of remarks from some folks who have been on the committee to kind of give their perspectives. Let's start with Mary Ann. Let's go down the list on the slide. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Rodney. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone today. I'm an educator who happens to also be a lawyer, and I teach at UNM School of Law. I teach courses in constitutional rights, criminal law, criminal procedure, and education law. And my research and writing is at the intersection of all of those areas. So I focus on increasing access for students who are underrepresented in higher ed and in certain careers, and how to better give them, overcome the legal obstacles to their full participation in public schools. So I have 2 points I wanted to share with regard to why I think our proposal is important for the board. The first is, we're so lucky to have an incredibly diverse district in so many ways. And I think that these trainings will do two things. One, they would help build on the community's trust in the ABC board and sort of signal to the community the importance of at the very highest levels of this partnership, why we think it's important, and it will serve as a signal and a model to the community, and that would build trust. And the second point I wanted to make has to do with how anti-racist trainings can support the idea of structural change, which is so critical to anti-racism, and the ways in which we interact with one another, but also with the students that we work with are so important. And I think that these anti-racist trainings really will focus on, again, the structural commitment of the board and signal that to students as well as the community. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Jessie.
Hi, my name is Jessie Clifton. I'm an attorney at Disability Rights New Mexico. I recently finished a fellowship that was around the school to prison pipeline for students with disabilities. And as everyone here is likely aware, if you're not, I'll share this truth with you, that students with disabilities and students of color are both disproportionately referred to law enforcement and exclusionary discipline. in schools. And so this anti-racist training, Disability Rights in Mexico, does feel like would benefit not only the students, but students of color, students with disabilities, but like Professor Anjani was saying, the structural change that's necessary to actually see things move. And this anti-racist training is particularly useful, I feel anyway, because of the discussions surrounding power dynamics, oppressive systems, historical racism, bias, and not most importantly, but certainly not least, gatekeeping. And I think that that's why it's particularly important that leadership be engaged in these trainings, and not just with each other, but with community. And that's what ARDI sets out to do. So I support this training for APS and ABC schools, and I hope that the board will also join in on participating in the training too.
Thanks, Jesse. Marco.
So good morning. Thank you, Rodney. Good morning, everybody. I'm Marco Harris. I'm the principal at Highland High School. I am not a lawyer, nor am I affiliated with any illegal groups. But with that said, I truly appreciate Jesse and Miriam presenting their points. A couple things that I just want to remind folks is a year ago, actually today, I had the ability to be in the pit celebrating our quarterfinals participation in the state basketball competition, which took us as runner-ups to the state. So I just wanted to show everybody a little love in that world, because tomorrow it was completely silent in that gym because there's nobody else there. So that was the one thing I wanted to remind. And I also, there's a lot of people on this forum that I believe know me from multiple lives, but I just want to send a big shout out, because we're talking about equity, and we're talking about having the ability, I think, to see the impact and possibilities. And I just want to send a shout out to Superintendent Elder, because 7 years ago, he tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm getting the heck out of Highland High School. This may be something that you want to focus your attention and energy towards." I was lucky enough to apply. I was lucky enough to get the position, at which point in time I realized that I had some work ahead of me if we were talking about equity and equality. So let me get into why it's important to me. And so I always start with my swag. If you can see, I'm wearing my Lincoln socks today, right? The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that provided equality, or the opportunity for equality, and really sparked the idea around equity within our conversation. And so there may be some things that I offend you. And if you get offended or defensive, you probably need the equity training. If you believe that the LGBTQ community should be not seen or heard, you probably need the equity training. If you believe the Southeast Heights students that I serve in the International District have the exact same access as some of our maybe schools in more affluent or entitled areas, you probably need to do equity training. The idea that oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a sec. Sorry. If your first thought when you saw me pop onto your screen is that he's the principal, isn't he the coach at Highland High School? You probably need equity training. If you haven't kind of figured out, I think equity training is the opportunity for us truly to bring equality to our students, equality to our families, equality within our communities. So with that, I just saw a kind of an interesting quote a little earlier that said, "We must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy." And I think this was some Albus Dumbledore from I've never seen what's the Harry Potter. But with that quote, as an individual that sits on a site in one of the probably highest need schools within our district, I feel like 90% of the time we take the easy route, which will never give us the opportunity or provide us the opportunity to really give an equal chance, right, to our students to perform at their highest levels. So with that, again, I'm Marco Harris. I hope I just gave you a little tidbit of why we all should be participating in equity for success. I mean, because that's really what it is once we can stack the blocks for our students, for our families, for our community partners to meet the expectation, now we're not talking about equity. We are talking about equality. So with that, I turn it over to Rodney, and thank you again for allowing me to give you my 2 cents.
Thank you, Marco. Well said. Alina.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the board for letting me speak today. It's always really hard to follow Marco, so I'm going to do my best. So I'm the Career and College Readiness Manager with Mission Graduate, and I'm also a former community school coordinator. And but today I really want to speak to you as a parent of an 11-year-old who attends a community school. You know, my hope is that the board really embraces this opportunity for anti-racism training with RD. I know personally how powerful this training can be because I've gone through it. And I'm excited for you all to have that same opportunity. In addition to knowing how powerful they can be, our youth deserve advocates that understand the ways that systemic racism affects their education. Our youth and families, as Marco was talking about, need leaders who are brave and can change racist policy. And to do that, we need it all to have the same understanding of how systemic injustice affects education. And also, we need role models. This is hard work. I'm not going to lie. This is hard every day, and this is hard work. And I'm just so excited to be on this journey with you all. And yeah, so thank you. And our kids really deserve the best, and I'm excited that APS is moving in this direction, the United Way is moving in this direction, and the ABC is moving in this direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alina. You did a good job of following Marco. You know, it was a tough assignment, but I think you pulled through. So now what I want to do is just open it up for a few minutes for questions from the board. Any questions?
Mr. Prunty, I have one.
Yes.
I just curious, how did you get Mr. Harris to restrain his comments to just a few minutes? I have been working with Mr. Harris for a long time, and I have asked him repeatedly, tight, Mr. Harris. And I am very curious because because I've been to his graduation ceremonies. I've heard his speech. I'd like to work with you. But I want to say this. I don't know if this is as much a question as a comment. Thank you all for that presentation. I'm pleased that we've been able to make these steps to move APS into this training. I've been through now 2 of those trainings. I haven't done the 2.5 day, but I've completed the full day training. It is powerful. It is moving. And, you know, I agree with all of you. We need role models like you all. To be in our schools, to be in positions of authority, to represent our communities of color. And, you know, when Mr. Harris and I met about Highland 1, I didn't say I'm getting the heck out of here. I did say, I really hope you'll consider this position because you are the principal for this school. And I'm extremely pleased that he took that step. And I hope I can support him as he continues to move forward because he is a great example of what we can do in the public schools. So I guess my question, if it was one, is could you repeat again the cost that this might cost the board? Could you go back?
Yes, it would cost us $16,500.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Brooke, it looks like your hand's up.
Thank you very much. That was I really liked all of your comments. And I will say, Marco made it really relatable. And I think that for all of you and your different pieces and expertise and, you know, what you're bringing to the table in order to promote this and encourage people to join, to make it relatable and to make it something that we can all learn how to say, hey, if you're doing this, then you probably need that. Is a really very powerful way of saying and making it clear, I think, to a lot of people that maybe are passing judgment too soon and don't think they are, right? Which is exactly why we're saying we need this. My question is kind of related to Mr. Elder's. Forgive me because I'm new to this board, so I'm still trying to get caught up on some of the things. But $16,500, is that doable? I'm going to make an assumption that yes, the funding might be there, but where do we get the money to fund this if we vote yes? And then my other question is, if we were to vote yes for all of this and support this, what is the deadline for everyone to get trained? What does that end result look like? Are we talking about 1 month, 6 months, a year? Just so that way people have, I think, an expectation of what they can realistically achieve if they do agree to proceed with this.
So I'll let Danette answer, or someone else answer the first question about the money, but I can answer the second question by saying that the proposal really asks for the board to be trained by the end of the 2021 calendar year. So by December.
Thank you.
Yes, so on the funding side, Albuquerque Public Schools and Bernalillo County contribute to an operating budget for ABC that includes community school development funding. So we do have the funds to do that should the board want to move forward with that, thanks to those two entities.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Ellen.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of observations from the point of view of robust implementation. And our committee's report will come a little later, but there are so many implications for connections that I just want to point out this cannot be siloed in any way, that we have to make connections. And some of the connections that I've been working on in my role with the educators I represent are connections to restorative practices in schools, connections to ethnic studies and intersectionality. I like to call it intersectional education. And one of the things I think we really need to make connections to is common practices and pedagogy in our classrooms, the way in which we test young children and sort them from an early age often boils down to income, which kind of implies race and culture. And to start this work, I hope we can be committed to expanding this work to change actual structures in public schooling. That's my comment.
Thank you, Ellen. Well said. Barbara.
And since we're singing Mr. Harris's praises, I think it's so appropriate that he's in this role right now, because he's been so instrumental in the development of community schools and the schools where he's worked, and really sees how community schools are such an integral part of, if we're going to talk reality of fighting racism, it can't be done without the role that community schools play. So, plus his graduations, even if they're long, they are the best in APS.
Thank you, Barbara. I know we're getting probably past time. Any other quick questions before we move on to the vote?
Looks like Commissioner Quezada has a question.
Yes. Stephen? You're on mute, Stephen.
That's the first time anyone's ever told me that. So I'm a little slow this morning. I'm usually right on that. I 100% support this. But my question is that, I come from YDI. So I come from the nonprofit. I did the gang intervention programs back in the day when, it didn't matter that I was a crazy guy going into gangs, pulling kids out of gangs. I'm a little older now. I can't do that anymore. But I feel that, I'd like to support this, but I'd like to make sure that this is a reoccurring kind of training, that it's not a one-time kind of deal that we just put it out one year and think that we've overcome, a century of racism. That I believe that we need to make a commitment to reoccurring funds to make sure that this is something that we address on a yearly basis moving forward into the future. That's when I think you're really going to start to see results. So I just want to make that comment to make sure that we're not looking at this as a one-time deal, but that we're looking at, if we're looking at funding, we always have to look at funding, especially when it comes to education. Something I learned when I was on the school board is that you have to have reoccurring funds. You can't let things just fund it one time and then it falls to the side and then it doesn't have a purpose anymore. So I just want to just plead to everybody to make sure that that's what we're looking at into the future, and that that we have a systemic long-term game plan. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Stephen, and very well stated, and certainly duly noted that this can't just be a check the box one-off, that it has to be embedded into the system of the organization in order for us to really see the kind of change that we want. So that was a great point to make. Thank you for that. So in the interest of time, and we'll definitely keep that on our radar, we'll make sure that we embed this. We'll have conversations about this moving forward. So in the interest of time, I just want to make a motion to the board that the board commits to 100% of the board members and the intermediary leadership team members to take the Anti-Racist Training Institute's training by participating in a 5-hour appetizer training and a 2.5-day full session by the end of the 2021 calendar year.
All right, we have
I'll make the second for that.
a second from Barbara Peterson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, I believe it passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. I believe moving on to our second presentation on collaborative leadership.
So Marjorie, would you like to start or shall I?
I trust you, Barbara. Please go right ahead. I'm here. I'm right behind you.
So our discussion for this committee was not, we can't compete with how well developed and the progress that the Equity and Inclusion Committee has made. But we have really launched into a conversation of what is collaborative leadership? What's our definition, and the importance of having a shared understanding that collaborative leadership is not just having everyone at the table, but it's making sure that the conversation that needs to happen begins at the table and isn't imposed on the table after it's developed. So that's one really critical step. Deanna, in her brilliance, I think, made a point that's really helpful in thinking about what collaborative leadership means, that if we look at the pillars of community schools, the other three are program. It's what do we need to have in place to offer to build the community schools. But collaborative leadership is much more structural. It's much more tied to the process. How do we make decisions? How do we move forward? How do we make sure that we include everyone who needs to be there? Part of sort of the practical part that we talked about is the importance of the participation, the importance of administrative participation, as well as staff participation, the need for conversation and commitment and dialogue back and forth between the instructional council, which really is the democratic instructional piece of what's going on in a school, with the community school council and what that looks like. And then the other part of it is that our work on the collaborative leadership committee really needs to be tied to the robust implementation. that it's not separate, just like the equity work has to be integrated and integral. The collaborative leadership piece needs to be absolutely integral to the work moving forward. So Marjorie, what else? What have I left out?
You have covered it very well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for the report. And I believe our next report is on robust implementation.
We started a process that's going to take us some time. What we're doing right now is taking the standards for community schools and looking at it. First, we're reviewing the standard and then all of the elements that go with it. So those of you that are familiar with teacher evaluation, it's the same thing. Here's a category and here's the way in which it's described. And then we're talking about implications. And those are complex and interesting conversations and always bring up this need to work with collaborative leadership. Like Barbara just said, the two are very intertwined. So it's going to take us some time to go through this, but I think one of the biggest things that we all talked about was the need to connect a community school council and an instructional council, especially if we assume that community schools will impact learning. How is that connection made? And how do we ensure, again, that we're not functioning in silos? Deanna, you want to add anything? Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you. Communication and marketing. It's always awkward when the communication group is a little quiet. Not sure I have a name here, so I don't know who to harass.
Daniel or Peggy? I don't know where Peggy went.
I think board member Mueller Aragon is here. If not, I can give the presentation.
Okay. Why don't you? I don't know. I'm checking to see if she got kicked off for something, and I have to move her. Let me check and see though. Go ahead.
Do you want me to go? Or do you want to go to sustainability?
If you're comfortable going, why don't you go ahead and start, and we'll see if we can't get her on.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, Superintendent Elder. The communications and marketing, we had our third meeting this week, and we went over just reminding the goals of the product. We have a deadline to finish the communication plan by June. And so we've been going sequentially through the stages of a communication plan. And so just reminding what the goals of the messaging committee is, that we wanted to create a communication plan for alignment and shared messaging across all partners and sectors. And we expect this work to be done by June. And so once we're done with that in June, then we're going to move on to deploying a communication engagement plan that is looking to engage reporters, communication staff from all our partner organizations, community school coordinators, and other people with a role to play in helping tell a unified and consistent story about community schools and the work of ABC and all the partner organizations. So we kind of tentatively put something on the map. If we're going to get done with the communication plan by June, we're looking for possibly a summer meeting date where we're looking to plan and organize a collective meeting with the communication staff from all of our partner organizations during the summer. And in that meeting, we're going to do some education about community schools to the different partner organizations and community and communication staff. But also we're going to work to create alignment and protocols on how to get stories out and how to work together with that partners. And so that's kind of the work that we're doing. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 5th. And we're going to be in that next meeting that we're going to be working on in April. We're really going to start working and focusing on the key messages that we need to start deploying to identifying the audience as well, and then what key messages we say to the different audiences. And we're probably going to need to send out probably some kind of survey or form to send out to the entire board to kind of get input to help us craft that message, and then we'll bring it back to you guys to massage that to make sure it works good for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you very much for stepping up. It's nice to hear an active office. So very good. And then sustainability.
Good morning. So we have some basics that we put together for sustainability, kind of some basic points that I'll share with everybody. So the Sustainability Committee decided to create 2 working groups, and one working group would be created with an intent to focus on public policy and planning. And the other one would really kind of drill down and focus on funding opportunities. We also decided that the public policy work group will create a process and a criteria that we can use to vet requests related to ABC signing on in support of any initiative or any issue. And the committee will also be identifying individuals to invite to those working groups to ensure that there's a very broad net, a broad voice, and that we ensure a very broad kind of opportunity for representation with those matters. So those are kind of some of the basic elements that the Sustainability Committee has been discussing.
Great. Of course, as I finish up the last report, I realized I failed to ask if anyone had any questions during any of these presentations. So I guess at this point, if anyone has any general questions for any of the committees, this is your opportunity to ask them. Okay. I don't feel as bad now, but I would have if all the hands had gone up. So thank you all very much. All right, so we do have some voting items in front of us. First would be the February minutes. Assume you all received those and have reviewed them. Do we have a motion to accept the February minutes?
Mr. Elder, I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the February 11th minutes.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Runty, thank you. A second. All in favor?
I just have a comment.
Thank you.
No, sorry, thank you. And I don't feel particularly on the minutes I read it showed Commissioner Barboa and it said follow, that we should follow, and then it sort of cuts off. On the minutes that I had said follow the leadership of communities of color that are leading in this work. I don't just as a mark. I mean, if it's going to prolong the process of us having to go through it, just to mark that it sort of didn't complete the sentence there. But
I think that's an absolutely appropriate comment, and we can adjust the minutes to reflect the full comment. Follow the leadership of communities of color. And again, this is my first time facilitating. I apologize. Commissioner Barboa, you jump at any time and remind me that I'm supposed to take comments on these things. So absolutely appropriate. Are there any other redactions or additions to the minutes? Excellent. So do we have to make a motion to approve with the adjustment made?
As everyone's in favor, we should be good. There's
Okay.
no objections to it.
Okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes with the additional comments? And all opposed? Okay. That addition will be made. Thank you very much. We've already approved the committee request. So I believe we can move on to the community school strategy bright spots. I believe that's you, Miss.
Excellent. Just a few things that we wanted to just catch people up on. ABC, we didn't talk about this when it happened because we wanted to see how far we got. but we were nominated as the Community School Partnership for New Mexico Ethics and Business Award. And we found out last month that we didn't actually win, but we got to the finalists. So we were up against like I think it was one or two other organizations, which I thought was really tremendous, considering that we're not actually an organization or formally an organization. We are a joint powers agreement between three very large government entities. And what was really exciting about it, we had to do a number of interviews with folks. The New Mexico Ethics and Business group is attached to CNM. So we had the opportunity to speak with both students that are working on projects around this topic, but then also the committee members. And I have to say that the feedback that we received for what we're doing with such a high level board and large organizations, and then when you add in the University of New Mexico, which is, pretty small and all, and how we are, and then the American Teachers Federation and the groups that are coming in United Way, really working together, they were incredibly impressed with the fact that we really consistently and effectively put politics aside and put people first. And so I really just wanted to let the board know that occurred, and that and just kudos to you all. It would be very easy not to do that, right? There's a lot of spaces where we don't have the ability to really come together and work as one to put communities first for a variety of very valid reasons. And ABC really doesn't seem to be one of those. So it's pretty amazing. And even today's discussion is really something that that shows that people are looking at how we help our communities that we all live in become better places to live in at the leadership of those communities. So thank you very much for giving our team the opportunity to do that work and to really stand true to it. The ABC team isn't always the favorite in various spaces, because we try to really stand in our truth and try to follow and practice what we preach. And the board always backs us up on that. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us too. I'm sure my team would agree, to be able to lead the work at your direction. The other thing I want to let you know is that the State of the State report came out, and there is a link in your agenda, and it'll be on the website when we post everything after the meeting. It's focused on the state-funded community schools, of which the ABC network has 7. There are about 30 across the state that are being funded by the New Mexico Public Education Department through the funding that we were able to advocate with the New Mexico Coalition for Community Schools. But the ABC team very much supports the work through the coalition with PED, and there's some good information. There's some good information that cited the ABC Community School Partnership in there. So that's really tremendous. And then also to let you know that we launched last month, we've had 2 meetings thus far, a community school leader network. And it's really a community of practice. We're trying to create a community of practice for community school leaders and aspiring leaders to help folks that are in charge of these schools really start to have a system of support for the work. No matter what we say, community schools are more work on a principal. And it takes more than a building manager to lead a community school. It really takes a leader that can work with diverse populations, who is open to really bringing actionable voice to the decision-making within their school and being able to manage that, right? It's not always easy to have lots of people in your business trying to help you make all those decisions, right? And so this network of leaders, we had about 20 folks on the first call. The second call, I think we had almost that many. We're also using that space to gather information to help inform the state and other institutions on how to create education for community school leaders. So what do they need? What are the training opportunities? What are the classes that need to be created? We're working with the state around their Principals Pursuing Excellence program, and how do we have a community school track so that we can really help people be ready to walk into a community school. It's hard enough to get people to want to be principals, let alone like throw them into a community school with nothing to know about, what's going on. And then also so that they have a space to really talk with one another. It is open. We opened it in March. We opened it to the whole state. So we had a couple principals from other communities. We met with a lot of APS principals, and they said we would really appreciate it if you would open this up to our peers around the state, because we like to hear different perspectives from different places and really see what people are dealing with and how they're handling it in their community. So we've done that. So that's where we're at. So we have the group meets the first Friday of every month from 10:30 to 11:30. No, 11 to 12. Sorry, it's 11 to 12. So it's very exciting. It's principals only, and any assistant principals or those folks that are really aspiring to lead a community school are welcome to join. So wanted to let you know about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Deanna to talk a little bit more about where we're at with our data for this year thus far.
Hi, thank you. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me some time to talk about my favorite thing, and yours too, which is our mid-year data report. So just a reminder to those of you who haven't seen this very overwhelming looking sheet here. This is what we're capturing here with all of our community schools is kind of how much are we doing. We're trying to shift this year a little bit more into how well are we doing it, and is anybody better off? So I'm going to just walk you through this sheet really quick just to help you understand kind of what you're looking at here, because I know it is a little overwhelming. So as you can see, there are, sorry, hang on. We have 32 schools who are reporting in this particular report. This was put together in December. And what we do is we have certain reporting tools, a very large spreadsheet that we ask each community school coordinator to gather whatever data they can that we then put together into a cumulative report, which is what you're seeing here. So this is 32 out of 39 community schools. Some of the schools were brand new, and so we didn't have any data from them just yet. So we will do another report like this at the end of the school year. So we'll be able to have all 39 schools on that particular report. Over here on the left, you'll see this wheel, this pie chart. This is kind of a peek at the diversity of the community school councils that meet every 2 weeks in almost all of our schools. Each color is a different, we call them diversity sectors. What's really kind of important about this graph is that each one of these colors and the number of people in them represents someone who has attended the community school council at that school at least half the time. So they really are present and participating in the decision making at that school. And I'll just read the categories for you because I know it's very, very small. So we have 52 school administrators, 46 community school coordinators, and that's more than we have because they attend each other's meetings. We have 78 school staff, 23 district support. We have 10 health-linked organizations, 8 school nurses, 14 school counselors, 6 other health representatives, 23 parents and guardians, 9 students, 14 family engagement representatives, 42 community-based organizations. Sorry, let's see, it's even small for me. 12 faith-based organizations, 7 business leaders, 10 elected officials, which includes many of you, 27 out-of-school time providers, and 5 other out-of-school time providers. So lots of really diverse voices from the community making decisions. The middle section that you see here, these are some kind of needs assessment that went out at some point during the first semester. In some cases, schools conducted surveys. In other cases, APS had asked for virtual home visits, and many coordinators were able to jump on that opportunity to ask some of these questions in addition to the ones that APS had requested. And so we were able to pull together some really great data around what are the families in the schools kind of were struggling with last semester. What we circled here for you, is the food, which obviously we knew was going to be a need. It's quite high. 74% of the respondents said that there was a need for food, and many partners have come together to help meet that need. The box below that is demographics. Just shows you that there are 19,000 students in community schools right now, which we're very excited about. It also shows you the numbers broken down by categories that are defined as the at-risk categories, student categories in the Martinez and Yazzie lawsuit. And this is the first time we've captured it like this, and we're really hoping to show that these particular students received certain services and resources to help meet the requirements of that lawsuit. And then over here in the orange box, we have what we call our leverage. So what the coordinators do to gather this is they talk to all their partners and anybody who contributed anything to the school or donated anything to the school, and they monetize that. So it could be volunteer hours, it could be a grant that they received, it could be a basket of turkeys, all kinds of things. And then we put a monetary amount to that, and then we add it all up together. So last semester, for across these 32 schools, the amount that was brought in to help for resources was $2,366,600, which is really quite impressive for just one semester. And some of that is directly APS resources, but the majority of it comes from community partners. So I just want to point out the circle here on the integrated student supports. These 4 pillars are the 4 pillars of community schools, and you can take a look at those later on at your leisure. But I just want to point out this one that was circled. So going back to our food needs, where we identified 4,139 people who said that they needed help with food, there were 28,722 times that students or their families received some kind of basic needs service. That usually includes food, clothing, shoes in some cases. So we were able to identify that need and then bring our partners together to really meet that need. And I'm going to show you what that looks like at one particular school. And I'm super glad that Principal Harris, I hope he's still here, to highlight Highland High School, because this was quite an amazing demonstration of what I'm talking about. So in Highland High School's needs assessment, 28% of their respondents, which was about 320 some people, said that they were worried about their housing stability. So that means they could have been worried about paying rent, about being evicted, or they were currently homeless, or some kind of housing stability issue. So what Highland High School did is the community school coordinator took this statistic to his community school council, and they themselves either did something or reached out to additional partners. So this list on the left, these are 15, actually 19 partners that were engaged to help meet that need. And last semester, they were able to actually help. The circled here says 161 families that received legal assistance. About 155 of those were specifically housing assistance. And you can see that the average amount of assistance that was needed for each family was $550. And when you add that up, it was $85,250 of resources that were brought in to help stabilize those families. Now, of course, for us, what matters about that is that these are students who either were homeless and aren't now, or were precariously housed and are more stably housed now, and therefore their education was not disrupted because they were not worried about moving from place to place or where they were going to sleep that night, and hopefully they were able to have internet access that was stable so that they could participate in school. So that's just one example of the many, many, many examples from our community schools of how we use data to really try to match the needs with community partners to help students and their families be stabilized so that we can really improve educational outcomes, or at least create the conditions for learning. Thanks so much for letting me share today.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. I actually would love to get that graphic for our own purposes, because I think, any comments on that? And Commissioner Barboa?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. I don't know if we could go back to the first graphic. But yeah, thank you. I would love to also have this. I don't know if you've already, or if we could get it emailed to us. Yeah, can you go back to it?
So I will, Commissioner Barboa, absolutely. I just wanted to point out that, so we will send you this presentation as a PDF, and there is a link right here under number 4 that will give you that whole graphic plus each school's. So
I love that.
Every single school. Okay. So yeah, we will absolutely send that out to you, and I will go back to it now.
Thank you. And I mean, this is such, It gives us such a great picture. I could ask a million questions probably on each of these, so thank you. I won't do that right now. But one point that when it says under the demographics and you enrolled in the APS McKinney rental you talked about the Yazzie Martinez. What did you say you were tracking in that under demographics, or just that all of these are?
Yeah, so according to the court's findings of fact, and then what PED also added in their at-risk index, there are certain categories of students who are considered to be at risk. And these are the students that the court identified as not receiving adequate services. And so these are the categories that were identified by both the court and PED. So what we're trying to do, and you, again, you can't see it here really, but ideally at the end of the year, we'll be able to say that these particular students received these particular services, or at least our best guess, so that we can know how many of those students in those categories in each of these schools received some kind of resource or service.
Thank
It's
you.
our first attempt to really help to offset some of those challenges that were brought up in the lawsuit.
Thank you, Deanna. And I think you guys are just on such a great, I love the questions, even that you asked about adult education, and that this sounds like this survey was so thorough. So thank you all for this work.
Are there any other questions or comments about this information? I would simply like to say, if you go back to the State of the State report, I hope you all took a moment and read that. There were 4 wonderful stories about community schools around the state. And I have no choice. I have to highlight the one on Los Padillas. There is a photo of 2 young ladies, and I love the comment under it's girls flexing their STEM muscles during Los Padillas' Genius Hour. And I just simply, it's a wonderful picture and it's a great caption. And I really think it captures a lot of what's going on in a lot of our schools as far as trying to accelerate work and not remediate work, and give these communities of color an opportunity to express things and explore things that they really are interested in and may not have had many opportunities in the past. So I really like that principal down there. Cesar Hernandez is a great guy, and I'm very supportive. So thank you very much. If there are no other comments, then announcements, Danette. I know you've been, there were a lot of announcements posted in Q&A, and it looks like Danette has been moving those into chat, but does anyone need to, Danette, do you need to read any of those or point any out to us?
I just went ahead and put in the chat to save time for today, which is what we'll do at the end of every meeting. We'll move it in there so people can read them if we don't have time. And since we're really close to being out of time, if there's any other community announcements, go ahead and put them in the chat for everyone. We also save those in the recording. But thank you very much. And then the only other thing would be the board member announcements, if there are any. Also, I would like to point out that Barbara Peterson was reading a storybook last night at Manzano Mesa. So we threw her picture in there to say fabulous and wonderful as always.
And I have to say that I think Zoom makes us more unattractive than anything we can imagine. It's a little horrifying, but just a shout out to, and I think this is reflective of all of our community school coordinators, but Silvina, there must have been 30 students participating last night. She had chopped up, she acted as sous chef and deliverer as needed so that homework diner could happen in students' homes. And it was really an amazing event. It was great.
Okay, well, I believe that is our announcements, and we are at the end of our time. Again, we appreciate all the reports. We appreciate all the work from the committees.